Welcome to the Church of Thomas. Snapped, 5/29/09. I recently saw a news story that horrified me no end. It always hits close to home when somebody who claims to represent God does something that is really super horrible and basically is not remorseful for it. This is an example of someone who did not take the teachings of Jesus to heart. Basically, this is the story. This was a deacon in a local prominent church, and he turned into a bank robber. According to the news interviewer, he said that he had snapped and had just desperately needed these resources and had decided to turn to armed robbery to get it. Now, at first you might go, wow, he must have really been in bad shape. He did have some bad situations going on. One, he was a widower. His wife had died a year or so earlier, and he had been making a little bit more money because of the double income. Without her there, then there was the loss of not just support for the family, but monetarily supporting. Maybe they had purchased a home they couldn't afford separately. But in addition to that, his children, his daughters, were apparently raised with only the finest of things. Their expectations were quite high. And when his wife died and the resources dwindled, he was basically robbing Peter to pay Paul. He was taking from some resources that needed to be paid to get them the things that they wanted. Then apparently there was also the idea that he felt that the only way to get a good education was for them to be going to private school. Now, he didn't home teach them. If he really wanted them to be, properly schooled, maybe that's what he should have done. But instead, they had been going to private school before his wife died, and he had been scrimping and saving and doing all sorts of stuff to keep them in private school. The money that he stole was for them to have these specialty items that they had grown accustomed to, and to keep them in private school. He never even considered public school, which his taxes had already paid for. He never considered the idea that the things that needed to be cut back on as a leader of his family, he should have put his foot down. But instead, he snapped and decided to basically threaten the life of somebody to get money that was not his, and he was a deacon of a church. You can see why I was quite annoyed. Anyway, I think that this revolves around the idea of worship of money. Now, in the Gospel of Thomas, Reconciler Gospel of Thomas included, there is a verse, it's verse 47, that talks about the idea of worshiping, and the idea that you cannot worship two things, because something will be lost in the translation. This deacon apparently worshipped money and what the money could buy. I'm going to read you verse 47. It is impossible for a person to mount two steeds or stretch two bows at the same time. It is impossible to serve two bosses. A person would respect one and treat the other with contempt. This does not mean that reason and spirit are two masters. Those two should work as a team to reach the one. No one who has a taste for old wine reaches for an unaged new wine. New wine cannot be put in old wineskins because they would burst. And old wine does not have life, and its sugar is expended and would spoil in a new wineskin because the skin is not cured by the fermentation. An old patch is not safely sewn onto a new garment because it will be ripped because the cloth shrinks at two different rates. Now, the key part of this is the idea of pulling two bows at the same time or riding two horses at the same time. Now, I'm sure at the circus they could probably do it, but The average person can't do that. Imagine somebody trying to balance, 1 foot on each horse. They're not going to be real settled in either one. You have to choose one. He chose money, while saying that he represented God. You can't pull 2 bows. You only have 2 arms. It takes 2 arms to pull a bow properly. He chose to pull the bow that represented his children staying in private school and them getting the little tidbits that they liked the best. I will pray for him because he seems to need a lot of remedial training. I hope I never wind up in that situation. It's pitiful. God bless the whole world, no exceptions. Angel Eliza.